Yeah, that's a completely wrong take on the Chinese lending practices. First of all, the majority of debt in emerging markets is owed to Western institutions, multilateral institutions, and financial institutions, including private creditors, not to China. And second of all, China has provided stable financing for infrastructure and developmental goals for emerging markets. And as I mentioned, it's a learning process. So between 2013 to right before the pandemic, China's international lending practice has also substantially evolved, including the countries to which they lend, the lending standards, the transparency, working with more project-based rather than sovereign government per se, more than bilateral lending. So all of these have changed, as is recorded very well in the data. And there have been really virtually no asset seizures. So this is not a debt trap. Emerging market debt problems have been a time-honored historical problem, even before China came to the scene. So it has nothing to do with that. China's trying to help. Of course, it can do better with greater transparency, mechanisms, international coordination. Well, China's own economy and financial strain recently is going to curb a lot of the international lending to Belt and Road. That's just a reality that we have to face. And second of all, again, like we have discussed, there has to be a different kind of common framework with a more representation of emerging markets, of which China is the leader. So I think going forward, the Western countries have to recognize that their rules and their game, the rules of their game has to be adjusted not only to meet modern and contemporary standards, meaning closer to the market, involve private creditors, and also incentivizing China to play a greater role. I think there's enough room for stimulus, but the problem is that you need a massive stimulus in the trillions of RMB or more to have a moderate impact on today's Chinese economy, because the return on the stimulus is much lower than it was during the financial crisis in 2009. So I think the current strategy is to do as much as they possibly can to achieve, let me rephrase that. The current strategy is to do just enough to keep the economy going towards getting to the 23,000 per capita GDP goal by 2035, but not more than that because there are not enough resources. I think the most important thing is to reduce the cost of capital for smaller firms, small, medium-sized firms. Because of China's financial system, there are layers and layers in the system that adds to the cost of capital. So by the time you the economy doesn't trickle into the real economy, and if it does, it's already a very high cost capital base. So right now, the current problem is that a lot of the credit is stuck within the financial system rather than working for the real economy.